Satellite imagery is now reinforcing what regional shipping trackers and defense watchers have been suggesting for days. The United States is widening its military footprint around one of the world's most sensitive waterways, positioning itself to pressure Iran without locking American forces into the most dangerous part of the choke point. Images reviewed by multiple outlets show the U.S. Navy's Nimitz-class aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln operating in the Gulf of Oman, roughly 200 kilometers south of Iran's coastline. That places the carrier just outside the Strait of Hormuz, close enough to influence it, but far enough to reduce exposure to the narrow, crowded waters where small boat swarms, coastal missiles, drones, and mines can compress reaction time to almost nothing. The location matters because the mission appears to be shifting from trying to hold the strait itself to shaping the approaches to it. Instead of parking major assets inside Hormuz, the United States is increasingly oriented east of the choke point, where the sea space opens up into deeper water and a wider operating area. From there, U.S. forces can watch shipping lanes, build a layered radar and surveillance picture, and, if ordered, interdict vessels before they ever reach the bottleneck. In practical terms, that means a buffer zone. It also means a campaign that can be sustained with fewer of the vulnerabilities that come from operating inside the strait's confined geometry, where commercial tankers and warships share the same narrow corridors, and where a single incident can escalate rapidly. A carrier strike group amplifies that posture dramatically. An aircraft carrier is not just a runway, it is a moving command node with persistent intelligence collection, airborne early warning, electronic warfare support, and strike aircraft that can reach across the region at short notice. Even without firing a shot, the presence of a carrier changes the risk calculations for anyone considering harassment at sea because it adds speed, reach, and response options. Iran is answering that military pressure with political messaging designed to frame the American approach as reckless and economically dangerous. Iranian officials have repeatedly argued that any attempt to choke Iranian trade, especially around Hormuz, would not remain a local problem. Their core point is simple. Energy markets and global shipping are interconnected, and disruption near the strait can ripple outward within hours. That argument is also meant to warn third countries that even a limited maritime campaign could raise insurance costs, lengthen routes, and inject new volatility into oil and gas prices. For Iran, it is a way to make the cost of escalation feel global, not regional. Those messages are landing against a backdrop of rapidly moving events, renewed U.S. force flows into the Middle East, fresh signals of preparation for sustained air operations, and a diplomatic track that has sputtered at precisely the moment the military track appears to be accelerating. Over the weekend, U.S. and Iranian delegations held marathon negotiations in Islamabad, Pakistan, an intensive round of talks that stretched for roughly 21 hours but ended without an agreement. The U.S. delegation was led by Vice President J.D. Vance, turning the Islamabad meeting into one of the highest-profile diplomatic efforts of the crisis so far. The talks were widely seen as a make-or-break attempt to stabilize the ceasefire framework and create a path toward de-escalation. Instead, the negotiations ended in disagreement, especially over the future of Iran's nuclear program and what constraints, if any, Tehran would accept in exchange for an end to the fighting and a reduction in pressure. American reporting indicates Washington sought long-term limits on enrichment as a central condition, while Iran resisted demands that it viewed as permanently stripping sovereign capability. Mediators, including regional part-time ERS working with Pakistan, have signaled they still want another round, and some officials have insisted the door is not fully closed. But as of now, the political momentum is not toward reconciliation, it is toward leverage. And the leverage is being built with speed. In the hours after the Islamabad track collapsed, reporting indicated the Pentagon accelerated the movement of additional aircraft and personnel into the region, framing it as reinforcement rather than routine rotation. U.S. officials described deployments numbering into the thousands, including additional troops positioned to support maritime security, force protection, and potential contingency operations. There have also been reports of elite units being placed on higher readiness, including paratroopers from the Army's 82nd Airborne Division, an indicator that planners want options that go beyond air and sea power, even if no ground operation has been announced. At the same time, U.S. Central Command has been released, seeing images and statements that underline operational tempo, photos of sailors preparing aircraft for nighttime missions, and public messaging that American forces are ready to act across the theater. Night operations are not unusual for a carrier air wing, but highlighting them now serves a purpose. It signals capability, endurance, and readiness. Another highly watched element is aerial refueling. Reports have described U.S. tanker aircraft concentrated at Israel's Ben Gurion Airport, including KC, 135 Stratotankers and KC, 4-6 Pegasus tankers. Tankers do not generate headlines the way fighters do, but they are the backbone of sustained long-range air campaigns. They extend loiter time, expand strike radius, and allow aircraft to take off with heavier payloads instead of extra fuel. In short, when tankers move, it often means planners are thinking about scale and duration, not just symbolism. All of this is unfolding as President Donald Trump, now in office and driving the U.S. responsibility, has publicly leaned into threats, deadlines, and maximum pressure language. In statements over the past several days, the president has portrayed Iran as militarily battered and politically cornered, while insisting that the United States will not allow Tehran to acquire a nuclear weapon. In one of his most pointed declarations, the president set a specific timeline for maritime action. He said, as you know, at 10 o'clock tomorrow, we have a blockade going into effect. That'll be 10 o'clock tomorrow. The specificity of the hour matters. It communicates decision, not deliberation, and it places psychological pressure on markets and on any ship owner calculating routes, risk, and insurance. The White House position, according to public statements attributed to the administration, is that the blockade is directed at Iran's port access and oil export capability, while still allowing broader commercial transit through the strait for countries not tied to Iranian trade. The idea is to punies Iran economically without triggering a full shutdown of Hormuz that would spike global prices and alienate partners. That's a narrow line to walk. A blockade that claims to avoid disrupting neutral shipping still requires identification, tracking, boarding capability, and an escalation ladder for noncompliance. The closer it gets to interdictions near Hormuz, the more likely it becomes that an incident, an aggressive approach, a warning shot, a drone overhead, a misread maneuver could be interpreted as the opening act of a wider confrontation. The president has also spoken about oil and American energy production in a way that suggests he believes the U.S. is insulated from blowback. Asterisk, he said, we have more oil because of drill, baby, drill. We have more oil than Russia and Saudi Arabia put together. Ask that line is aimed at domestic confidence, arguing the United States can withstand market disruption better than its rivals. But even if the U.S. can produce more, global energy pricing is still global. Disruption in the Gulf can drive up prices for allies, inflame inflation pressures, and rattle markets far beyond the region. And it can also pressure countries that Washington wants on side. On the nuclear question, the president has been unequivocal. He said Iran will not have a nuclear weapon. That is the central red line the administration is publicly anchoring to justify both coercive diplomacy and military force. He said, I don't care if they come back or not. It is a blunt dismissal, and it marks a shift away from the usual posture of leaving space, at least rhetorically, for a diplomatic off-ramp. Yet within the administration's orbit, reporting suggests internal debate about how far to go next. One option discussed has been limited strikes actions designed to keep pressure on Iran's military infrastructure without sliding into a prolonged campaign. Another option floated has been a broader bombing effort, but that carries risks, deeper regional destabilization, higher munitions expenditure, and the possibility of Iranian retaliation across multiple fronts. A third pathway is the maritime strategy now taking shape, tightening the net at sea, intercepting oil flows, pressuring third country buyers, and using a blockade to squeeze Tehran while avoiding the political costs of a ground war. That approach comes with its own complications. A blockade is not a press release. It must be enforced. Enforcement means boarding teams, maritime patrol aircraft, helicopters, drones, intelligence queues, legal frameworks, and a coherent set of rules for what happens when a ship refuses to comply or claims neutrality. Every interaction carries the risk of a miscalculation. Iran's response has been defiant, and Iranian military messaging has been especially pointed around the strait itself. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has warned that military vessels approaching the area will face severe consequences. Iranian naval commanders have publicly framed the very idea of an American sea blockade as unrealistic, mocking the notion that the U.S. can close Iranian access while Iran sits on the northern shore of the world's most strategically significant maritime corridor. In Tehran's narrative, the United States is trying to shift the cost of the confrontation onto the global economy. Iranian officials argue the real target is not only Iran, but the commercial system that allows energy and trade to flow. They want other countries, especially major importers and shipping powers, to see the American posture as a threat to their own economic stability. Iran is also likely to calculate that it can survive pain better than its opponents can tolerate uncertainty. Sanctions have been part of Iran's economic reality for decades. That does not mean sanctions are harmless, far from it, but it does mean Tehran has experience adapting, finding alternative buyers, using intermediaries, and building workarounds. A blockade would be a step change, but Iran will almost certainly search for asymmetric counters, pressure through proxies, cyber activity, harassment at sea, missile signaling, or calibrated disruption designed to raise costs without triggering total war. Against that chessboard, the USS Abraham Lincoln's placement in the Gulf of Oman looks less like a single deployment and more like the visible edge of a wider posture. The United States positioning to manage escalation while keeping its hands close to a set of options. From the Gulf of Oman, U.S. naval forces can monitor the routes that matter most: ships approaching from the Arabian Sea, shipping moving toward the Strait, and vessels that might be tied to sanctioned Iranian exports. It's also a more forgiving environment for flight operations and a safer sea space for escort maneuvers compared to the congested narrow lanes of Hormuz. But the strategic intent is clear. Preshu, is being built, and it is being built quickly. Diplomacy for now is in limbo. Mediators may try to salvage another round before a ceasefire window closes, and there are signs that not everyone has given up on a negotiated channel. Still, the public rhetoric has hardened. The military posture is expanding, the maritime picture is tightening, and the most dangerous reality is that the next turning point may not come from a planned decision in a conference room. It may come from a moment at sea, an aircraft shadowing a ship, a patrol boat speeding toward an escort screen, a drone crossing a red line, a boarding attempt that goes wrong. The Gulf has seen decades of brinkmanship. What's different now is the scale of forces gathering, the speed of the reinforcements, and the explicit talk of a blockade measured not in vague intentions, but in a clock time announced to the world. As the deadline arrives, the question is no longer whether the United States can project power near the Strait of Hormuz. It's whether that power can be used to compel Iran without triggering the very disruption the world fears most, a conflict that doesn't stay contained, one that spills into global trade, energy markets, and a region already saturated with tension. What happens next will likely be decided in two arenas at once: behind closed doors, where mediators search for terms that neither side wants to accept, and on open water, where warships, tankers, aircraft, and drones operate within seconds of irreversible decisions.